Hey, dickheads! Like a pink laser beam of truth beaming from all over the world to your brain hole. I am your resident dickhead, but tonight we've got a whole veritable plethora, as they say in the Three Amigos, of dickheads that are going to join us in this conversation. Tonight we are very pleased to have Dan Abella here, who is the man behind or the founder of the Philip K. Dick Film Festival, which is entering is year 13, Dan, right? 13th annual?
Year 13, right. We started in 2012. Yep.
Yep. And so very exciting stuff. So before we get into the events that are coming up, and we have one that's coming up in 2 days. So the folks watching this on the YouTube feed will have missed that one. But they can. But the Phil K. Dick Fest is a thing that you're going to be doing again and again and again. So we'll talk about that. What's your Philip K. Dick origin story? Like, how did you discover Philip K. Dick and become a fan?
Well, I think that the name picked me. I mean, I came across, there are two names that I always found something odd about them. The Philip K. Dick and H.P. Lovecraft. And I kind of looked at them as this is something odd, but I didn't really pay any attention to that. But then what ended up happening was that I'm a big fan of Borges, Jorge Luis Borges, who is, I remember one occasion reading on the back of one of these books that Ursula K. Le Guin mentioned that Philip K. Dick is our own homegrown Borges. So that kind of piqued my attention. I said, well, I've never come across any American who would even match Borges in terms of his depth and really philosophical exploration. So I started picking up Philip K. Dick books, and I started with the most recent ones. I mean, literally, I started with Valis, not the most recent, but the latest ones, Valis, Transmigration, and Divine Invasion. And I kind of worked backwards. So it's like most people start with usually with the old film, the ones from the 1950s. So that's really what got me started, and I was blown away when I read Valis. I said, this person is onto something truly phenomenal. And I would come across people and say, have you heard of Philip K. Dick? Many of them said, who? I said, okay. Blade Runner. Oh, I see Blade Runner. So, Blade Runner, Minority Report. And, one thing about those films, although they popularized film, in another way, they had done them a tremendous disservice because a lot of people who watch those films think that the novels are like that. And they're not. Very different. The characters, as you all know, are very different. And although some of the themes may be kind of similar, but at the end of the day, they're kind of Phil's characters seem to be very average, everyday Joe. Whereas I'm not, whereas every time you had a Blade Runner, maybe the Blade Runner character may have been a little bit because he was always beaten up by the androids. The character played by Harrison Ford. But in general, what I've seen coming out of Hollywood is these supercharged action figures, which are a bit of a joke and a disservice to Philip K. Dick. I feel Philip K. Dick represents something a lot more profound than just people jumping from buildings. But being that as it may, I still appreciate the fact that at least the word is getting on, and people really are starting to catch on Philip K. Dick's more philosophical musings. So I decided in 2012 that we really needed a festival that explores the underlying themes of film, identity, parallel universes, realities, what does it mean to be human, etc. I actually made a movie back in 2004. I directed a feature called The Final Equation. And looking in retrospect, it really had a lot of parallels to some of the stuff that Phil did. So I thought, hey, I'm onto a certain wavelength here, a certain frequency, the 2374 frequency here. So here I am, 13 years later. I mean, most of the films that we do carry are not Phil's films. As you know, the estate is pretty much as an ironclad control over all the films, and most of them go to Hollywood. But every so often we'll have one like Piper in the Woods, or we'll have Meddlers, or we'll have some others. But I'm just hoping that one day there'll be some really good indie PKD adaptations The
Well,
only
certainly
one.
with as many that of the stories that are in public domain, it's possible to do so.
It's so weird because they end up always picking up Piper in the Woods. Like this year, we got like maybe the seventh Piper in the. What's up with Piper in the Woods? I mean, I know it's a decent story, but come on, there are a lot of other ones. But I'm happy. I think that Phil's more than any other sci-fi writer has got the finger on the pulse, and that's part of the research that I've been doing in the last couple of years. You know.
Right. Well, and I know, for example, the year I went to the film fest, the film that I was most blown away by was the adaptation of the Arthur C. Clarke story, 9 Billion Names of God.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, and that was so, and it's funny because you definitely don't really think of Clarke and PKD and the similar tracks, but that story in particular did work very well for the festival, and that was my favorite of 2019 when I was at the fest. And but so tell us a little bit about programming for the fest and like how that's changed over the years. And then I want to talk about all the different places you've taken the fest too, because that's really awesome as well.
Well, the programming we have virtually all our programmers are filmmakers. First of all, we're not just some critics. We don't like critics as a rule because they don't appreciate what it means to be a filmmaker and how hard it is. A critic can just say, "Oh, this film is this." So as a filmmaker, we're really very compassionate about towards the films we select. We're not just looking for fancy special effects. We're looking for a soul, the soul of the story, you know. I think in general we have about half a dozen, depending on the year, between half a dozen and a dozen programmers, and they're all filmmakers. Some of them are in the U.S., some of them are in Germany, some of them are in the U.K., and we all collaborate and basically watching over 1,000 films. And some of them are terrible, awful. Some of them are great, and most of them are in between. So we're looking for that. I'm always hopeful that I'll find one that will just blow my mind. I say, "Oh my God, this is awesome! This is the next Matrix or the next." Oh, I mean, in terms of like the new paradigm shifting. So, always on the lookout for those kind of films, and basically we just distribute the work amongst ourselves, and we've been doing this pretty regularly for. A lot of the filmmakers that are our programmers were filmmakers who submitted films to our festival, and then we became friends. And that's how some of our films have been shown in France and in Germany and in Poland and Rotterdam, and hopefully at the end of this year we'll do one in London as well.
Yeah, so you started in New York City, and that's where you're at, right?
Yes, yeah. This is our home base,
Yeah,
which I regard as the center of the Matrix.
right.
I mean, it really is. New York is a joke. I mean, it's. But it's good. You want to be in it, fighting right here in the middle, in the center of the cyclone.
Right. And then you've done it in LA and Orange County, Phil Land. And that actually, my trip up for the film festival in Orange County was my first experience going to places where Phil lived to check out all of his Santa Ana addresses and Fullerton addresses. So that was my first experience doing that. And you've done that, and then London and Berlin, right? Those are the places where.
London is coming up. Hopefully this year. Cologne.
Okay.
We've done. Actually, matter of fact, we did one in Cologne just this past October. Yeah.
Right, and we're gonna talk about this year's fest because it's coming up in April. A little bit later, and I know you have
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Because I've never been to a Philip K. Dick film festival, so I was just wondering if you could briefly describe what it consists of, what I would see if I went to one.
Okay, so the basic philosophy is not to show just corny sci-fi films. There are plenty of those in Netflix and other places. We want to show sci-fi that is becoming what I refer to as a sneak preview into the future, just something around the corner. Whether how the latest dating app will end up becoming something nightmarish, or how AI might become a way to keep you in prison, in the black iron prison, or how psychedelics may not be so pleasant. We basically, these are future scenarios, like of what might happen if technology goes um, without a soul. And I think that we believe that there is science and science fiction are coming together. In fact, really, when looking back, when we did it 10 years ago, a lot of the stuff that we're taking for granted, like the possibility that we're living in a simulation, people would have laughed at that maybe 15, 20 years ago. So come on. Or the possibility of AGI, artificial, general intelligence, or genetic engineering, like and so on. Now a lot of this, and even this UFO thing is, which 5 years ago we did our UFO 2017, where we had Jacques Vallée, Al Pudov, we were talking about the what's going on in remote viewing and so on, and that's becoming commonplace. So it's getting harder and harder for us to really, really wake people up to what's going on, because I think they're already up on it. So what you might find in a programming, films that deal with the near future application of technology, or how relationships are being entangled with technology, how we define our personalities through technology, and so on. Some films might deal with parallel universes. Other deals with humanity, how we can remain human, the challenge of being human, without either giving up on our tools, our little toys, and that's been a big part of of the programming.
I'm sorry. Is it just one theater that you're checking out, and basically it's movie after movie after movie with speakers interspersed? I just want the mundane details.
Okay, well, so we have, all right, so we have several theaters. We have Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We have each on Friday. On Saturday. Most of them are followed by Q&A. We might have a panel. I mean, I think we're looking at doing two panels. So one of them is the idea is the government currently using firms like Ancestry.com or 23andMe to do DNA marker analysis, looking for human hybrid. That's something that's coming up. Kid Green actually was one of the original remote viewing people, mentions that that's definitely a possibility. So that's a panel. Another panel is, dealing with the challenges as a filmmaker in today's climate. Film distribution just keeps changing every year, so it speaks. Mm-hmm. So generally, we try to spice it up with panels and talks. Another thing we're doing this year, which is special new, is I'm creating an alternative reality game called The Search for the Valis Transmission, or What is the Valis Transmission? So for those who want to participate, there'll be various widgets and texts and information that will be given to take him along this little ride into a world Valis, into the upside down, and I think it's really, for us, is a major move forward to really share what it means to be going inside the mind of PKD. We have documentaries. We have one amazing documentary dealing with androids, sex androids, and how that's starting to alter the ecology of relationships. So we generally have panels, some talks. Depends on the year. We don't just we'll pick a talk arbitrarily. Usually it's followed by a documentary that kind of supports that. So every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'll have different panels, Q&As, talks. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and this year you have a world premiere for Memories of the Future, which looks very interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and but does anyone have any questions about the film fest, or we can go on to Dan's talk? And again, we'll open up the floor at the end, and we can do more questions then too. But
I have a couple that would come in here pretty well.
Yeah.
Where can we watch? Is there any way we can watch the films that have been featured in the fest previously?
That's a great question. That's exactly what I was going to come to. We actually have something called the Unseen Realm, which it's right now we're partnering with Dystopia Media, and what they will do is they will actually get these shorts into the streaming platform. So we're putting together a show, quote unquote, a little bit like the Twilight Zone, or a little bit like Night Gallery, right? We would also remember that far back. And these shows basically deal with themes related to PKD. But first I thought let's the best of PKD, and I said no. A lot of people won't even know it, but there will be a lot of PKD shorts. So it's called The Unseen Realm. That's going to be you can watch this online in our Squarespace server on a Wednesday, April 3rd. April 3rd. And this was the first one. It has some of what we consider some of the best PKD films in the last 12 years, And so it's kind of mixture. For instance, one of the films has Olmos. It's called The Art of Human Salvage, Edward James Olmos. You remember it from Blade Runner. Another one has Keir Dullea and Margot Kidder, and she's gone. It was like may have been one of her last films. It's called Henry. Another one has Clancy Brown. So we hope that this really will takes off. And what I'm looking to do in the future with The Unseen Realm is to have interviews with various directors and all basically center on these themes. So that's on Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? Yeah, April 3rd.
Yeah, the first day of this year's fest, right?
Right. Now, April 4th is going to be the online of this year's some curated films of this year's festivals. A lot of filmmakers don't want their films online. They prefer to go through a festival circuit many times before finally goes online. But we've selected about 15 films that we'll be showing live. We'll be showing live, but they'll also be showing online on Thursday, April 4th. And the 5th is going to be one location in Manhattan, the 6th, another location in Manhattan. I'm sorry, the 4th, Manhattan, the 5th, Saturday on Manhattan, and Sunday it's going to be in Brooklyn.
Nice. Yeah, and that's one of the things that was cool about the fest you had here in California is that you had a couple different locations too for people to move around. And one of my experiences that I had at the fest is much like at Philip K. Dick Festival, there's just great conversations walking around with people. Tom?
I just want to put in a plug and just say I went last April to New York to the festival, and it was fantastic. I just want to commend Dan and his team because, as Dan's pointed out, even with the stories in the public domain, you don't get as many PKD films by the kinds of filmmakers that would give them the sort of treatments that folks like us would want to see. Dan and his team do an amazing job of curating films that speak to the same themes or just have a kind of philosophical integrity to them. It's fantastic. So if you're looking for an excuse to get to New York, as I always am, I can highly recommend. I was there last year and I was so glad I went.
Yeah, and Tom, your cat's tail is amazing, looks otherworldly, like waving in front of you. And Brent, your hair is unstoppable today. I just want to say that. Shout out to the crew and shout out to Blake Wilson, who just got here. Important dickhead. Gil, you have more questions?
No, they can wait until the end.
Okay. So one of the things we wanted to promote, Dan, today is that in 2 days' time, you're going to have something similar to what we're doing today. You're going to have an online discussion called Philip K. Dick, Valis, and the Hidden Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, it's free. I RSVP'd already. I'm planning on being there. Can you tell us about this talk and what you're planning to do?
Okay, well, this talks comes from two experiences that I had. I had one is my own evolution in trying to connect the dots between what Philip K. Dick's 2374 experience and other people's experiences. And the other is a friend of mine who suddenly disappeared. He left a whole bunch of notes relating to Valis. He was, I'm surprised he never reached out to you guys, but he was fairly fanatic about the Valis experience, and he said he basically thought Valis could be accessed directly. It wasn't just the PKD's imagination or experience, but it could be. And he left some really strange notes, and which I'm trying to scribble. Been talking to his mom, and he just disappeared. I don't know where he is. I hope he's okay, but I haven't heard from him in months. So this is like a convergence of two streams of thought. So essentially, what I'm going to be sharing on Thursday will be a few things regarding and again, with some of the stuff I might say, some of you might take issue with and might, argue otherwise, and how you feel free. So I mean, that's my personal direction. But what he did is okay. So let me backtrack a little bit. I'm using the example of remote viewers. So remote viewers access information, and generally the first transmission they pick most of the time, information they're going from another part of the world, is an original transmission. And then later on, they have what we refer to as analytical overlays, which is the left brain, or we start figuring out what this is and what this is that. So what my friend thought, who disappeared, is that the original transmission of PKDs that we are living in 70 AD, shortly right afterwards. And he started to believe that, to the point that I started getting worried about him. We're living in 70 AD. And all of this is a simulation, and that Phil's original transmission was later corrupted, or not corrupted, but may have been overlaid with left brain analytical overlays from his interpretation. So Philip starts talking about zebra. He starts talking about some strange satellite that's beaming pink beams all over. In his opinion, and I'm beginning to think that as well, that's actually a left brain analytical overlay, that Phil was pulled by that transmission to connect with what Valis represented to him. But there was a part of him that was very individualistic, that wanted to give interpretations to that transmission. And maybe, and I have the exegesis, and it's extremely, as any of you have read and probably edited, it's very difficult to make heads or tails of it. One moment he's talking about the original the original Gnostic egg. Another moment he's talking about the laser beams. So where are we? So my friend, after going through that book backwards and forwards, he believes that the original transmission is 70 AD, and that there is a countercurrent that's more of a Lovecraftian nature that was received by H.P. Lovecraft. Now, a lot of people have written with that, Crowley and Typhonian tradition. But basically, this idea that their Valis is a very benevolent, loving energy. It's not just a being that you can just pick up and run with it. And there are according to him, there were ways of threading or connecting to that transmission. One way is generally the synchronicities we have. One of the things that I do, by the way, during the day, I'm actually a counselor. I work with vets, and I work with people who suffer from PTSD and so on. And one of the things that I usually find out is that some of them have real access to their right brain in most peculiar ways. But the synchronicities are an example that there's certain kinds of information that's available, that it's behind the forms, and that information is available to all. And that's, according to my friend, it was from Valis. It's some kind of larger, loving being. Now, in terms of the research that I did before I started communicating with him, is that I had the opportunity of meeting Robert Anton Wilson, before he passed away. I met him back in the late 90s. And we spoke a little bit about Phil, and Robert Anton Wilson had similar experiences, particularly the telepathic messages he's getting from the star Sirius, and so there is something to be said about kind of an evolutionary development that's taking place. Not just Phil may have been one of the first ones. There are others that have been following afterwards. So when we start concentrating too much on Phil and his experience, we may be underestimating the possibility that there are others that are waking up with very similar experiences. And the idea is that It might have been because Phil's, he felt incomplete. Maybe as a result of perhaps his fraternal sister, Jane, just, not being there. It was a part of him that made him feel he was not of this world. Maybe that could have connected him to the Valis transmission. He always fed everything led up to Valis. So anyone who reads his early books and says, well, Valis is just garbage. But I don't like that. Doesn't understand Philip K. Dick. He's there. The Mace of Death was that vision he saw may have been a Lovecraftian or a malevolent being. It was not Valis. It was something else, another transmission. And I think he was undergoing a kind of initiation, but there was a lot of other stuff that he was doing in his life that made it difficult to stabilize the transmission, including the amphetamines. The one thing I want to leave you guys, everybody, is that 2374 is not a schizophrenic or a split personality. I work with schizophrenics. I work with people like that, and he's nothing like that. There's nothing. It's not a psychotic episode. So, but again, we're tapping into something called a very loving energy. It's not the field, like a lot of people, New Agers talk about it. It's not the field. It's something much more than that. And so I'm kind of in my early work of fleshing out that and how you can tap into Valis, and how to start experiencing. Now,
so your talk, you have like an audio visual component, and you have
absolutely, yeah. Well, that's right now. I have a I'm gonna be running through a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a PowerPoint presentation. It's going to be very linear. This is, again, I've been focusing a lot on the last couple of days on the festival, so some of this,
right?
But no, this is going to be an audio, and I'm going to follow up one by one, one by one, very slide-driven kind of presentation.
As somebody who read Valis first, Dan, I'm wondering, because Valis wasn't my first experience, but obviously Valis is something you connect to very seriously. How different was it reading the earlier books coming from that perspective? Like, which of the other earlier books do you feel is connected to?
Well, the main ones are the trilogy in Radio Free Album, of course, but I also read the Counterclock, yeah, I like that. And also the Man in the High Castle. I think the way he was using the I Ching and the characters are something that I've been using. And by the way, the I Ching is also another way of indicating this. We're contacting an intelligence field. Those who have worked with the I Ching, and I've done it significantly, it's eerie. It's very strange the way it really almost reveals another side of the barrier. But then it doesn't have to be just the I Ching. For instance, I will sometimes take a dictionary, or I'll tell some of my friends who just pick say the Old Testament or the New Testament, just open it up randomly. Think of something and they will open it up randomly. You'll find something there that is related to what you're thinking that day. So the synchronicities don't just apply like tea leaves. They don't just apply to one specific system of connection. So so I would say, yeah, the early works and specifically Man in the High Castle. Those are Ubik, of course, that's another one.
Mm-hmm. Now, I always think about Bill Cyril, who, of course, Maze of Death was dedicated to. Bill is a really interesting guy to talk to, in part because he knew Phil very well, and he, at the same time, can talk about Phil through a very mystical lens and then also through a very human lens, because he spent time with him.
Yeah, I actually I did interview with him a couple of years ago with our channel.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm wondering, like, how, as somebody who obviously really feels that Valis is something that we can tap into, sometimes the hard part for me is I spend so much time granularly analyzing his day-to-day life that it's hard for me to separate the guy who is very human to me with the grand notions of him as this as a mystic, but of course I at the same time I'm powerfully moved by his books. So I feel the connection too, right? But I wonder how you feel about like that balance of Phil the human being, and Phil the mystic.
Well, that's the thing about it, is that the two of them cannot be separated. I mean, he was agoraphobic, he all kinds of phobias, and I think a lot of them had to do with this sense of loss from, I think had to do with Jane and his early childhood. And I think that never left him. And unfortunately, and he was very aware. He was early in his life. I think around 80, 81, 82. By 82, there was already talk about left brain, right brain research, and he hinted at in some of his work. So I think he understood there was something there, and he couldn't quite untangle. I think a lot of it was wrapped up around some of those fears and phobias and anxieties. And the anxiety, I think, and I work with people that have it very similar, agoraphobia. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to have a session with a fellow has a fear of confined spaces. And Phil, even though he was apparently seeing a psychologist or a therapist, whatever, he didn't do a good job with the guy, because today's
Right.
technology will just disappear those problems, disappear them. I work with people with PTSD. In a matter of 2 or 3 sessions, they're gone. But a lot of psychologists, they hide behind their degree, and they don't do anything. And I'm afraid Phil is, and it's really a shame, because I think there was something there about the man that really came to a sort of an understanding of what was going on in the world. I believe that a lot of people think that he was a Gnostic. He vacillated. I don't think he wasn't sure. If you read Cosmology and Cosmogony, he talks about this zebra, or this machine, or I think there he calls it zebra. It doesn't seem like a demiurge that's aware of its own existence. It's some kind of apparatus. So he seemed to be changing from moment to moment. Where I think that Phil was onto something is that I do believe we're reaching a kind of singularity in human consciousness, as something, or an event. Terence McKenna talked about the transcendental object at the end of time rushing towards us. There's something happening in human consciousness, and Phil kind of talked about that. So Phil is not the only one that I research. I think there are others would be saying the same thing. René Guénon, who is a traditionalist, French traditionalist. He believed that all religions lead, when practiced in its purity, they lead to the same truth. What we're seeing today is he calls it the counter initiation, where you have a hodgepodge, a little bit of Taoism, a lot of it Shintoism, a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Buddhism. That goes backwards. That's a retrogressive movement. I think Phil would have probably agreed with that, even though, yeah, some people would say he was a Gnostic and that was that. But I think that was a lot of people know, they realize something is happening to the universe, to our reality, and they don't want to think about it. But I'm think about it all the time. That's why I feel, when I think of Phil, a kind of a kindred soul, because I always felt something weird about the world, and not I can't say about.
I think
But I think a lot of people are thinking about the new Trump and the new Caesarism. The empire never ended. We are like puppets in a larger dynamic. That's my opinion. Some people may think, no, it's the same. It's nothing happened like that. But I do believe that the empire never ended. The new Caesarism and now the counter-revolution. And I think Phil saw that. He would probably be appalled at what's happening today in today's politics. It was even today's more extreme than during the times of Nixon, I think.
so. Before I open up the floor for questions from everyone, first, can you tell us how they can take part on Thursday night for the folks that are here live? And will there be any way for the people who are not watching live, who are watching in the future, will they be able to access this talk, or is this building into something else?
Yeah, actually, that's actually Brent has a great idea. What I'm gonna do, if let me see if I can. I'm not the greatest with technology here. Just a little side note. Let me see if I can pull up the let me see here. I can pull up the link. I'll send it. I'll add it right now. I'll have you guys here. Give me a second. I'll add it
Sure.
right here. And as a matter of fact, we may just be in luck. As I say, I'm not that great with technology, but we'll have to deal with it. See how the distribution is right here. Just give me a second here. Okay.
Well,
Here we go. Man, give me a second here.
okay.
I'll
Yeah,
just, I'll
and-
send it. I'll add it to the. I'm adding it to the link, so everybody who wants to be part of the. Okay, here you go. Everybody who wants to be part of the madness can join us. Here you go. There.
Thank
And
you.
and I call it a hidden revelation because it's in plain sight. There are no codes, there are no algorithms that we need to decipher to connect with this, with Valis. None. That's the
Now,
thing.
is this a talk that you'll be making available online in the future, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually thinking, I'm writing a book right now. So this is like, sort of like the beginning. I think in a way, I have a feeling that my friend ended up in a bad place. I'm not gonna say anything beyond that because he was also like Phil. Felt like reality was starting to crumble. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people who are very creative, very intelligent, very visionaries, they have that's the downside. So, but there are certain things he said at the end that have been troubling me for a long time, and in a way, I'm hoping he's still alive. And no one has heard of him for months, so I hope he's still alive. But in case he is, it's a kind of a tribute to what he shared with me before I last spoke with him, and that's. But he was a big, he loved Philip. I think he read everything. I mean,
Yeah.
But he was also a very introverted person. He didn't like to talk about it. Actually met him at one of the festivals, and we got talking, we corresponded.
So we got a lot of brilliant people here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I definitely want to open up the floor, make sure everyone feels welcome. Just jump on in. I'll keep talking if if nobody else jumps in. But does anyone have any questions about specifically about the fest or the Valis talk?
Dan put a link to the talk in the chat for everybody who wants it.
Oh, I think Dan just did that.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, David, for reminding everybody of that. Yeah.
Yep. And but this is really exciting for us, Dan. I feel like we definitely needed to connect with you and make sure that this community, we're here every Tuesday. So
Yeah.
and one of the fun things for us over the near future and doing these like more organized interviews is like making sure that like those in this community that we're continuing to learn from each other and talk and have these kind of organized thoughts. And of course, this going up on the Dickheads podcast feed is really good too, because we got over 1,000 subscribers over there now. Which
Wow.
when we started this podcast, I thought we would have 12. I did not realize how big this was going to be. Okay, Nick has a question. Dan, what are some of your favorite films from the fest?
This year's fest or past years? I just want
to. Let me look at that
this
you've shown at the fest in general.
Yeah.
In general, okay. Okay. Well, one of the ones is Henry, actually, which will be shown in the Unseen Realm. I think it's very, very, very touching. Henry, without telling you, I don't want to tell the story, but this is a humanoid, an android whose spaceship is heading right into a black hole or into a star, and and something happens at the end that it's very touching, very very warm, and Henry's played by Keir Dullea, and his excellent acting style. Another one, what's over the years? I like Volition. Actually, I mean, remember that year when that film that was the feature that you were there. That as a feature, I think it worked very well. It's very, it moved around in various circles, and
I like that one too. But that 9 billion names of God, because I knew the story and I thought it was a great adaptation of it.
It was a really really good adaptation. There is one version of the Piper in the Woods that really came in. Like 4 that we showed it in France, that I thought it was really well done, very well done. And
I found one on YouTube that I thought was great, but I wouldn't be able to separate it from the other Piper in the Woods.
However, there is a film in the US Festival that's awesome. It doesn't say the Piper in the Woods, but if you look at the credits, it says the Piper.
Yeah.
It's called Bloom, and the visual is beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, it's really an amazing film. It's this model or wannabe model who is asked to take care of this greenhouse, and she starts developing a relationship with the plants. But the way it's done and expressed is absolutely fantastic. I love that.
So if there's filmmakers out there that want to submit their film to your fest, how do they do that?
They just submit it to my email, info@the Philip K. Dick Film Festival.
Got it. That's pretty simple.
It's fair. I mean, as long as you remember the long name, the Philip K. I'm used to that. When I did it back in 12, I didn't think of these. Well, maybe you should use the PKD Festival or PKD. But unfortunately, I still have this habit of having these very long domain names.
Well, we learned with the Dickheads podcast that it took us years to get on Apple Podcasts because they thought we were a penis podcast. And we have another question in the chat. Halphone5 says, nice to hear about the cool various organizing activities everyone's doing. Shout out to Dave for organizing the SF State Dick Fest. Yeah.
Way back in the day, huh? 13 years ago.
Yeah, and that's another reminder, people. Stick around. We're going to have updates on Philip K. Dick Fest 2026.
I've got a question for Dan.
Yeah.
Dan, have you heard from the estate about all of this? Did they ever
the estate was the first place that I spoke to.
Yeah.
I talked to she's 12 years ago, to the daughter.
To Isa?
Isa, yeah. That was, in fact, it was the day when she was in New York, and there were the exegesis came out, and they were talking about it, and that's when I went up to her and said, hey, it'd be nice to have a PKD festival. And she said, yes, absolutely, and I said, well, because I know I didn't have a chance to meet your dad, but I did meet Robert Anton Wilson. I met some of the other people around him, and so absolutely. And then we kind of followed up, and she's very well aware of our existence. In fact, Radio Free Album of John Allen Simon was the director. He knows it very well. She's aware. In fact, a couple of times she's commented on our Facebook page. So that's why when people come to me and say, hey, I want to do a PKD adaptation, I tell them, well, make sure you check with your state, because they don't mess around.
That's
they
one way of
definitely
putting
don't. They're cool, but you gotta respect that, But yeah, I mean, and over the years, a lot of other people that I work with a lot of people that are very close to the estate, and our goal is to really, and I think she appreciates what we've been doing, and that's about it. I mean, I don't really, I want to keep a safe distance. Don't want people start prying around what we're doing. But she's cool. I mean,
right on. That's good to know. Do you have any favorite science fiction movies that, just like mainstream releases or hidden gems, but more like not stuff you've shown, but major films or just, personal faves?
Videodrome.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was a good one. Of course, I what other ones? 2001. I mean, I remember watching it when I was just a kid, and it kind of blew my mind. Yeah. The Blade Runner, of course. I gotta admit, first time I watched it, I fell asleep. It took me a couple of times to finally get into the rhythm. but it's a great film. What other films? Uh, what other ones? Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's going way back. I thought it was great, very very original.
Sure.
The Andromeda Strain. Remember those? Remember that
Yeah.
one? The Andromeda Strain. What else? Of course, The Matrix. Who I think a lot of people would like that. And even though they really should have mentioned Phil, I mean, they mentioned everybody else but Phil, right? Baudrillard, Castaneda. But what about Phil? I mean, he's the one who talks about The Matrix, like in 1977. It wasn't the first one, but I mean, he was up very close to being one of the first ones. Have you ever watched? Was it the one with was Fassbender's early ones? It's Man on the Wire.
Man on the Wire. Yeah.
That's pretty trippy.
It's a challenging film, but it's quite good. Yeah.
It's challenging. Yes. So yeah, some of those are some of my favorite ones. I mean, it's Primer.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah,
on the NBC. Yeah, I love Primer. It's sad what happened with the director. Like he really went on the deep end, and I don't know. I saw Upstream Color by him as well. I thought it was great, but you get realize that Hollywood is not really that interested in really auteur, really original people. They're not. No. Every so often you'll have a film like Fight Club that pops up that's powerful, but they say that if Fight Club came up today, they probably wouldn't be greenlit.
Yeah.
So yet somehow they're doing a sequel of it.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Well, there was the comic book sequel. I didn't.
I believe there's a sequel in the works. I think I've even seen a trailer for it.
A sequel probably going to be very lame.
It really can't do what it's supposed to do. I mean,
I think that trailer that's floating around was just like a fan edit based on the comic. Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing that with the Matrix, like Matrix 5 with Neo is looks like 100 years old.
I saw an AI somebody had made like Schwarzenegger in Star Wars 5, and it was pretty funny, but which is one of the weird things going on with the AI generated films. But okay, folks, so when we do this, this is your chance to ask questions and jump in. And next week, I really hope we're going to have Alec Neville Ali next week, who is the author of Astounding, which is the biography of John W. Campbell, Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, and L. Ron Hubbard. And Alec is a wealth of knowledge. I especially want to ask him a lot of questions about John W. Campbell. So definitely.
See, that guy's got to still be tired from writing that book. That book is
well, he wrote the Buckminster Fuller book after that, which was even crazier. And I read that one. That one, the research was pretty intense too. But so Alec's going to be here next week. This is your opportunity to ask him about those figures in science fiction. But the topic that I pitched Alec on was we're all researching a science fiction author. So, he's done a lot of great research, and he and I always talk about archive nerding stuff. And he's very excited to come on and talk to all of us. But I really want a lot of participation in that one next week. So bring your questions. Think about if you get a chance to look at Astounding this week, that'd be great. But we're also going to talk to Tom today. So, although he just popped off.
I have one more question for Dan.
Yeah, go Brent.
So you said you're a psychologist during the day?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of curious, like the thread that brought you from like that area of study and expertise, like to film and into the Dick world. And
that's because I don't think I'm ever.
There's got to be a story there.
Yeah, I don't really. I've always felt there can be. It's very hard for me to pigeonhole myself into one area. I think I kind of more like a polymath in the sense that I love reading and learning and about different things. I've always been. Someone mentioned Lem, and I gotta remember one of the things that got me into filmmaking was when I saw Solaris. The original, the Russian version, not the Steven Soderbergh version. Solaris and Stalker. Very good. But I've always loved film. I think that what probably got me into it is when I was very young. I watched the Fly, the original Fly with Vincent Price, and The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. I thought this is amazing. I really got inspired, and my original direction was going to be in science, actually, to study, physics. But I realized that after a while, I was disappointed by some of the physics professors. Very dry, very soulless. So we're not the people like Einstein or Heisenberg or Schrodinger. We're very boring. I said, this is awful. And, so I basically slowly started drifting away from that. And over the years, I came across a series of disciplines that explored human consciousness, and I really became very into that. I mean, as I said, you could say I've had a philosophical bent. But since I was very young, because my dad was a philosopher and a writer and so on. So, I think that something rubbed off from him on me. And when Phil said I'm a fictionalizing philosopher, I get it. You're not just talking. This is not just fiction, and I get it. I mean, at least I personally feel it's not just like making up stuff. Although I see Phil as kind of the James Joyce of science fiction. Like I started reading Ubik the first time around, and I thought I was tripping. Like after the 10th pages, what is going on? I wasn't confused. I felt like my brain was like I had taken several hits of something. I was severely dissociated after a while. I said, that's his writing. That's his writing. That's what it do. That's what it'll do it. And and eventually I was studying consciousness, but I also I love film, and I feel that film is just another medium through which you communicate these ideas, just like writing, just like fiction. That's, I guess I'm always looking at a way to integrate both streams, because let's face it, a lot of people with the attention span of a goldfish today, they're unlikely to read anything serious, that's anything dense. So they want to films, but films can carry threads. They can be very subversive in nature. They can carry threads of what's on the other side, whether it be Inception, whether it be Blade Runner. That's why they're great films. They're not just some crazy space opera. And
all right, last call on questions for Dan. Any last questions? Hey, Dan, this was awesome. A really great discussion, and I really appreciate your time. You're more than welcome to stay and hang out, or I know it's late on the East Coast because most of us are Westies out here, but oh wait, Blake has a question.
That's clapping, David.
Just clapping. Oh, I thought it was raising a hand.
There's two hands there. Hey, Laura.
Laura, did you have a question?
No, I just wish a bunch of those movies were on DVD so you could watch them, because I'll never be able to get to a Philip K. Dick Film Festival, but I'd sure love to see them.
Well, I think Dan did talk about a way that we can watch them online, and
if you have internet service, you can catch some of those films online this year. Yes.
Yeah.
I wrote it down Wednesday, April 3rd, and
yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna coordinate to have a Q&A with some of the directors. As well, so you'll get a little bit about the PKD Film Festival experience. Yeah.
Nice.
So obviously follow the Philip K. Dick Film Festival website is probably a place we can do that. And Dan, I appreciate all the hard work you've done over the years for spreading the good PKD-ness. And I look forward to Thursday night. I will be rushing home from work to watch it because I'm on the West Coast.
Thank you, David, and everybody else, David and Blake and Laura and Frank and all the others who've been here. I mean, we're a community. But I think more people should know about us. Besides, I think it's more than just Blade Runner. When they hear Philip K. Dick, their eyes and ears just light up. Say, "Oh my God, we gotta go get this guy." It's catching up. I think people are learning more about this. He's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a great thing to end on. So, Larry, back in the studio. Cut.